Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerd Herder Show. I'm Nick.
I'm Rich.
And this is going to be a very spooky installment of our show. We're going to talk about Halloween stuff this week. It is Halloween week, and this whole month we've been doing
kind of horror Halloween themed stuff.
But we're gonna go hard with it today.
Going hard.
Yeah.
Just wait.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're gonna talk about some of our favorite horror themed movies of all time.
Yeah.
And so let's just get right into it, right?
Sure. You want to start?
We each chose 5 movies.
Mm-hmm.
Neither knows the 5 that the other picked, so there might be overlap. We'll see.
Yeah.
Not sure. I guess before we even start, though, we should just set up. You are a huge horror fan.
Yes, I'm a big horror fan of all shapes and sizes. Slow burns, gory, whatever. If it's horror, I'll watch it.
If it's horror, you'll watch it. And for the most part, I'm not. I'm not like opposed to horror. It's just in the grand scheme of like every genre imaginable, I don't usually gravitate towards some of them. There are some horror movies that I will watch all the time, and there are other ones that I'm just like, I have no interest in going to see that crappy movie. So it depends. I'm way more of a this time of year, sure. Other times of the year, it's really going to depend. So we have different tastes in that way, so it'll be interesting to see how our list reflect. Maybe you'll think my list is awful. We'll see. But why don't you tell me your first movie?
Sure. First movie on my list, I'm going to just start us off with a bang. What I would say is my all-time favorite horror film.
Oh, okay.
The Evil Dead.
All right. Hey. It was hiding in plain sight.
I know, it was right here the whole time. I saw it for the first time, I think I was still in high school, probably junior year in high school. Just fell in love with it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of give it the credit of why I wanted to get into filmmaking. It just kind of made, I've always been a horror fan. I remember, as a young child in elementary school, like wanting to watch horror and getting the tape, like Child's Play 2 off of USA, and how excited I was to watch that, things like that. And I had seen Army of Darkness first.
Okay.
Because I'd heard a lot of stuff about that, and I'd picked that up. I'd watched that, and I'm like, well, let me see, where this came from. And I saw the first Evil Dead and was just blown away. I know some people kind of, depending upon how you watch it and how you're introduced to it, you can either view it as it's a horror film or it's just really cheesy and we're going to laugh at it. And I went into it with the mindset of this is supposed to be a serious horror film and took it that way. And it's just a grueling, gruesome, mean, nasty horror film. I'm guessing you've seen it? Yes? Okay.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I'm a fan of Evil Dead, more specifically of Evil Dead 2.
Okay.
I like Army of Darkness. I even didn't entirely hate the remake, although there are a lot of parts of it I do not like. There's some good, there's some bad in that one. It's an iconic movie, for sure. I'm really interested to see what they do with Ash versus the Evil Dead.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that. When the time this video airs, it'll be playing this weekend.
That's very true, although I do not have stars. I'm not going to get stars for it, so I'll be seeing it.
I'll be telling you all about it.
I guess so. But, obviously a good choice. Not a surprising choice, like we said. Hiding in plain sight. Not on my list.
Okay.
I do enjoy. I considered putting some of the horror. I don't know if you're gonna have anything else from Sam Raimi on the list. I don't want to bury the lead.
See.
So we'll see. We can have some honorable mentions maybe at the end.
Sure.
But you went with your favorite of all time, so I will go with my favorite of all time.
Okay.
It's actually the first installment of a franchise that you aren't nuts about, haven't really watched much of, not sure. We've had this discussion, but my favorite horror movie of all time is actually from like the 3rd or 4th time that Wes Craven reinvented the horror wheel, and that is Scream.
Okay.
The first Scream. I like the other Scream movies to different levels as well, but the first Scream to me is a perfect movie. It's, like you said, with Evil Dead even, some people view it as kind of a satire of horror, some people view it as straight horror. Some people view it as like a comedy or a statement on teens or whatever. To me, it's all of those things, and it's all those things in a nice package that terrified me as a kid, that amuses me as an adult. I saw this movie in probably the later half of 1996 or early 1997. I was young Nick, and it scared the shit out of me. It really did, to the point where like I couldn't walk past like windows or glass doors in my house at night without like wondering if Ghostface was out there to kill me. And then it was, growing up and then seeing Scream 2 and seeing Scream 3 and then really having grown up and seen Scream 4 that like the franchise has, I feel like, been part of my entire like life in a way. And it's great. I love, it's iconic. The opening scene of that I think is as tense and as masterfully laid out as, even like the opening scene of Scream. It's one of the best opening scenes of all time in my of Jaws, of all time. I love the opening scene, the balls of it. Drew Barrymore was certainly a star at that point, and people didn't see that coming for sure. I love it.
I really like it. I haven't seen 2, 3, or 4. It is on my list of things to watch leading up to Halloween because I do finally want to see it.
Okay.
I've only seen it twice, actually. I saw it once a few years ago when I was finally like, okay, I'm going to finally sit down and watch this movie, and I really enjoyed it. Hadn't seen it for a few years. In a local theater, Enzion, if you guys are local, they did a Wes Craven tribute night, and played Scream for one of their midnight movies. And I forgot how good it really is. Like, it's such a solid horror film. I mean, just overall. And then, there's great comedic moments in it. That I had forgotten about too, and it's great.
And people say it. We heard all these things about Wes Craven in the past, because he unfortunately passed away. If somehow you didn't know that, about how he had reinvented horror. He did it with Nightmare on Elm Street. He definitely, I'd have to go back to see the true impact of that.
Yeah,
it's there, I'm sure. But with Scream, having been very much aware of cinema at that point, every horror movie that came out for like 5 years after that movie was trying to be Scream. It was trying to, have that Kevin Williamson, Wes Craven fingerprints on it. Whether it was I Know What You Did Last Summer or Urban Legend or whatever it was, they just came out one after another until people got sick of it, and then Saw came around, and then torture porn happened for a while, and horror definitely goes in waves, and Scream definitely jump-started a wave that was not there before, and it's honestly not one that I would be sad to see come back, but we'll see. I think right now, we've kind of moved out of the found footage thing, and we're kind of moving maybe more into, we'll see. I thought that The Conjuring would have more of an effect with how successful it was. Maybe those are still down the line, I don't know.
We seem to be getting some more ghosts. Things.
Ghosts definitely will be around for a little bit, but what is your second one?
Second would be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The original. The original one.
Okay.
Same with Evil Dead, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Again, I think I saw this probably around the same time as I saw Evil Dead. It was one of those that had been kind of hyped for years. It's this terrifying movie. It's so gory, it's so this and it's so that, and even my parents talked about, Texas Chainsaw, it's this and it's that. And it's obviously it's not gory. I don't really find it terrifying. I don't find a lot of horror terrifying, but for some reason I still continue to watch it and still love it. But like that end, you've seen it. That end dinner sequence, like it's still just so eerie and so kind of disturbing. That it leaves you on this edge, and it's just always. It's one of those films that I constantly go back to. I'm like, what do I want? Oh, we're gonna watch this. Oh, you haven't seen this? We're gonna watch this. What are we gonna watch for Halloween? We're gonna watch this. Like I drove to Jacksonville last year to see the 4K restoration on the big screen with Gunnar Hansen there. Like I mean, this is definitely one of the top horror films for me.
It's a good choice. The first time I saw this movie was right when the remake came out.
Okay.
I saw the Texas Chainsaw remake with some friends in 2002 when it came out, and we went and watched the movie, and I kind of like that movie.
Yeah.
It's pretty effective, and immediately from exiting the theater, we went and all watched for the first time the original.
Okay.
Like literally, like we're talking like a 4-hour period watching both movies, and I think that wasn't the best way to see it for the first time.
Sure.
In comparison to some of the violence in the new one, it just didn't strike any of us as effective as I think it could have. And maybe it was just an overkill of this, basically the same story again, blah, blah, blah. And I tried it again later, and I think because of that initial first viewing kind of being not the right way to see it, it's never hit me the way that maybe it should have.
Okay.
But it's definitely, I find it to be a compelling story. I've seen, the sequels. I've seen the sequels to the new ones, except for the latest one that came out like a year or two ago.
Oh my God.
I'm interested in seeing, I think there's another one in development. It is definitely just the idea of obviously that being like a true story, right? And just like, there's something about like those like redneck back alley, like crazy families that always interest me. Another one, a movie that I really like is The Devil's Rejects. Sort of in that same kind of a vein.
Yeah.
So a good choice. My second one is a movie that, some people don't consider to be a horror movie. But I definitely do, and I know that you do because you defended it in front of me not too long ago to someone else, and that is Ridley Scott's Alien. I think this is 100% a horror movie.
Yep, absolutely.
100%. The second one you can say is a sci-fi movie and onward, but the first movie is a horror movie in my estimation, and it is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, we're talking top 10 movies. I think it is horror sci-fi, and if I was to make a sci-fi list, I would have it just on there as well. It's both, but I think it can be both.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I love that franchise. I love everything that came out of it. But that first movie, there's just something so just atmospheric about it. The way, the same thing happened with Jaws. The limitations of the creature led to it being so much more effective.
Yeah.
Because it's always in the shadows. It's always, what is it going to be? Where is it? Instead of just always seeing it. And there's always something more terrifying, I think, and I don't know why more movies don't do that. Like, less is always more.
Yeah.
And I feel like so often we don't get that. We could have a whole conversation about that, but we won't. But I love Alien. It's one of my favorite horror movies. It's a movie I always try and watch this time of year.
My next one is going back a little bit further.
Okay.
Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. That's one that, again, I remember seeing really early, like as a young lad, seeing Psycho, and it's just always stuck with me. It's still effective. It's still, that's one of those movies that, when I find people who haven't seen it, I almost wish I could go back to a time where I had never seen it so I could experience it fresh all over again. But it's so effective, and he's so perfect. And that ending is just so, him sitting there is just so eerie, and it's really kind of one of the first slasher quote unquote films.
Absolutely. That's a movie that I actually had the inverse effect of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
I had seen the Gus Van Sant basic shot-for-shot remake of the movie before I saw Hitchcock's, and while I did not find the Gus Van Sant one to be effective at all, whether it was because I was already familiar with Vince Vaughn at the time or whatever it was, the Hitchcock one I found very effective. I think it's a great movie. It's definitely it's right up there with one of my favorites as well. Is that your favorite Hitchcock horror movie? Or?
It kind of goes between that and The Birds.
Birds, yeah. I'm a big fan of Rear Window, but maybe that's more suspense. I wouldn't classify that as pure horror. I don't think at all. Okay. This next one is another one that you might disagree with me on. I'm not sure, but it is to me it is certainly psychological horror, and that's Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan. I love Black Swan. I think it is an incredible movie. An interesting thing happened with that movie, and I'll kind of sneak two into one here, but
Okay.
it's not one of my five. A few weeks before Black Swan came out, there was one of Barnes & Noble's annual Criterion sales,
Mhm.
and one of the movies that I bought was Roman Polanski's Repulsion.
Nice.
Have you ever seen that movie?
Yes.
And the way that those two movies mirror each other has to be on purpose. That's another great movie, Repulsion. If you've never seen it, it's fantastic. But Black Swan is just such a trip. It's a movie that I'll probably in some ways reference when we do our stream it later on in the week. But the journey and the horrors that the Natalie Portman character goes through, and just kind of the horrors also of the commanding mother in
Yeah.
a way. But I think it's an excellent movie. I think it's one of the best movies of the past 10 years, and I think that it's kind of been forgotten
Yeah,
in some
I
ways.
agree.
It definitely made an imprint. She obviously won Best
Mhm.
Actress, but I think that a lot of people, that was the year of Social Network and some others, and I feel like it sort of has gone by the wayside, and unrightly so, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
I love Black Swan.
It's kind of is one of those that like I don't necessarily forget it, but like as soon as Barack, I'm like, oh yeah, like that's such a great movie.
It's a great movie.
Like it's not one that I'm constantly like it's always there, but I'm like it's every time I mention like oh yeah I remember that's and I remember seeing it and I saw it twice in the theater, and like the first time I saw it I was just so like engrossed in it, and this weird moment of like almost watching myself like kind of realizing how absorbed into this film that I was.
It's pretty amazing.
And it was just such an incredible experience.
And I personally, like I said, I view it as horror for sure. What's your next movie?
Are we doing honorable mentions or not?
We can mention a few.
Okay. For my next movie, I am going to do Poltergeist.
Oh, great one.
Again, another one. It's I don't really remember a time without having known Poltergeist. Saw it very young. One of the few films that I remember really terrifying me as a child. And just kind of as I've grown up and just grown with it, I'm always picking out more things of it. It's just such a good story. It's so well laid out. The characters are really well developed, and that's kind of what really builds and makes it more terrifying.
Absolutely. That is actually one that's on my list as
Okay.
well. It's a movie that, again, just like you, from a very, very young age, it's just kind of always been there. I remember, that back in the day when you could look at a TV like that and kind of imagine getting sucked in like Carol Ann. Great, fantastic movie. I showed it to some friends a few years back who had never seen it, and they, I was hoping that they would consider it to still be as effective, but they found some of the effects to be not as good. And
Really?
that was kind of disappointing to me.
See, I feel like the effects still hold up.
I do too. There's just some of the stuff when the ghosts are flying around where it just looked too much like it was like drawn on or something. People, but I think it's an
Damn
amazing
kids.
movie. I think it's an amazing movie that holds up incredibly well. So check out Poltergeist. Definitely, that's a dual recommendation.
The original.
Yes, I didn't even see the new one.
I can't speak to the remake, but I did not hear good things about it. But if you
Nor
want to see Poltergeist,
have I.
you want to see the original.
All right, so that was my fourth. So along with you, and so my fifth, jumping ahead, is you literally can't think of the Halloween time without Halloween, and that is definitely again one that I saw probably at too young of an age. Of course, we're talking about the John Carpenter Halloween. I mean, to me as a kid, Michael Myers was the boogeyman. Like, the first movie, I mean, it was just so... I think it was the first time that I'd seen a horror movie where the boogeyman, the killer, the monster, was just, like, out in the middle of the day. Like, that's the most terrifying part of that movie to me as a kid. It was when he's just out in the middle of the day.
It's just there, and then
he
he's
doesn't
gone.
just lurk at night.
Yeah.
Like, you're literally never safe. And growing up and seeing the sequels, and those are good to bad, and they kind of ruin not ruin, but they kind of they take it a bit too
Yeah.
far, and they kind of take away what was so scary about the first one in some ways. But that first movie, you watch it, and it's always effective. I watched it last Halloween with a friend, somebody I used to do a form or another project with, and one thing that, like, you watch it every time, I recognize something new, and like this time we just couldn't get away. We couldn't stop, like, laughing at how big of a dick Loomis is to the cop that he's with. I don't know if you've ever noticed
Yeah.
that. If you've ever he almost never acknowledges anything that he says, and he's just such a dick to him. But every time, whether it's the score or Michael Myers himself or Jamie Lee Curtis or just anything in that movie, it's so effective.
Yeah.
Love Carpenter's Halloween.
That was actually my next one. And like I saw it at a young age, and it's just so effective. Now, I actually showed it to somebody fairly recently, and they did not seem to find it nearly as effective, which was kind of interesting. But I think their approach was, if you were to watch that movie now, having kind of seen stuff since then, you might not see it quite as effective, because what was innovative and what was new then is now kind of a trope and a cliche with a lot of films.
Because every movie had to mirror that.
Exactly.
To speak to your point, I remember, I don't know what anniversary year we're in with that movie now, but
30.
maybe like 7 years ago or
Okay.
something, it was re-released in theaters,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to a
remember that.
big screening of it at our local giant movie
Mhm.
theater, and the people in front of us were kind of snickering the whole time. And I think that it is in an age where now we grew up with seeing the Saw movies and seeing
Mhm.
this and that. Even these were probably people who were a general audience, right?
Yeah.
But there's obviously crazy, messed up horror movies if you seek them out.
Yeah.
But just the mass movies that people have seen, like 18,000 Saw movies, the Hostel movies, and everything else. Like, maybe nothing in Halloween is as graphic as that or anything, but it's just on a visceral level so much more effective
Mm-hmm.
to me.
Just
than
an unknown, he doesn't, and I like the Rob Zombie remake.
Me too.
I do.
Yeah.
But you get, the first one's so much more effective, and he doesn't have that backstory. He is the boogeyman. He has no backstory. He has no reason. He has no motive.
Mhm.
All those bullshit reasons were never brought into it until the sequels.
Right.
It's just he is here and back to kill, because why the hell not?
Yeah. Exactly. That's why it's definitely so effective. So was that your 5?
That was my 5th.
Okay. So do you want to mention a couple others?
I do. I have one that I definitely want to mention,
Okay.
that I know you're actually going to disagree with quite a bit.
Okay.
Yes, my first honorable mention, and one of my favorite horror films of all time, is An American Werewolf in London, which I know you are not a fan of at all.
It's not scary. It's not funny. It's not good.
It is funny.
We disagree on
We
this
do
one.
disagree
We
on this
disagree
one.
on this one. We've had this.
We've had this conversation quite a few times, so we can go back and forth on it quite a bit. I really like it. I think it works as a horror film. I think it really works as a comedy. The scenes with Dead Jack are great. I think it worked. I know we could sit here and argue.
You
just
are
all
not
day.
alone, and I know many people who are on that
Yeah.
side of the fence too. So that's just one of those movies. I'll throw out an honorable mention.
Okay.
I'm actually a little bit surprised, but maybe not entirely, that neither of us included a straight up zombie movie. There's obviously a great deal,
Yeah.
many of them. Obviously you could throw out some of the George Romero movies, whether it was Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead,
Mhm.
Day of the Dead, blah blah blah, Diary of the Dead. I don't think either of us were going to say that.
The Land of the Dead, though.
Yes.
That's where it's at.
Any zombie movie with Johnny Legs. No, but and Simon Baker. But I actually am a bigger fan overall.
Mhm.
I love the Romero movies, but I'm a big fan of Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead.
I am
I
too.
really like that movie.
I
quite a bit.
prefer it to the original Dawn of the Dead.
Me as
I know
well.
I might get a lot of flack for that, but
I do too.
I prefer it to
Yeah,
the original.
absolutely. So that's I would recommend go see
Mhm.
at least the big 3 Romero.
Yeah.
and
Night,
then-
Dawn, and Day.
And then definitely check out Zack Snyder's as well.
Written by James Gunn.
That's
of,
right.
Of Guardians fame.
That's very true.
So if you're looking for more of his work, that's definitely a good place to go. I guess I could go off of that one a little bit since we didn't mention zombie movie. I put Shaun of the Dead
Yeah,
as one of
great
my
movie.
favorite zombie movies.
Great movie.
Um,
And I also am a huge fan of 28 Days Later,
okay.
the Danny Boyle one. 28 Weeks Later, not as much, but
I haven't seen 28 Days in a long time,
Oh, okay.
so I can't
big fan of that
quite
movie.
speak to that one.
Any others that you wanted to throw out
I've written down one on the list. Let me see what else is on here.
there? Just while you're going, a
Sure.
movie that I think honestly, to be honest, as every year goes on, I find it less and less effective.
Mm.
But I still like the movie is Nightmare on Elm Street. I really do. I think that there are just elements of it that every time I watch it, I just think that's not as good as I thought it used to be. And it's not even just the effects. It's like from just some of the ways that even that she acts, the main girl acts, her dynamic with her mother, just the way that the cops are. It's just almost all of it's just beyond stupid. But I do still that primary Freddy as a character and the way that he is in that movie, where he is truly just evil. It's not that goofy character,
Yeah.
really. That
Like he has those like
They're
little
in
snarky
there.
moments, but he's
They're
not
in there,
like
but it's not what
the
defines
silly.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would recommend it.
I would definitely put that kind of on my top one. And a more recent one I would put up there is Trick or Treat. We talked about that a little bit a couple
I
weeks
have
ago
another to talk about too.
for our things we do to get ready for Halloween, but that really does capture the spirit of Halloween in a really great way. And it's just fun. I mean, it is a lot of fun. Whether you're a horror fan, and there's humor in it, but I mean, it's just kind of a fun ride.
Yeah, and also, just like that movie, another one that I would highly recommend is Cabin in the Woods, which
Yes.
I think we talked about then. That's a more recent entry that I think, in a lot of ways, I mean, it really, in a lot of ways, should have ended the Cabin in the Woods genre.
Yeah.
It's another one of those movies like Scream for me, where it's an entry into it while also a satire
Mhm.
of it, and just a perfect, like, it just captures that perfect way to do both. Great fun, that movie. Don't get sick of watching it.
No. I have two more and I'll lump them together.
Alright.
Both vampire films.
Yeah, we didn't have any of those.
First one is Let the Right One In,
Mm.
which I absolutely adore. I think it's brilliant.
I don't know if we'll disagree on
Okay.
this or if it was your next thing. I prefer Let Me In.
Okay. That was not my next one.
Okay.
I don't care a whole lot for Let Me In.
Really?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
But I remember when, I've also read the book
Okay.
it's based on, and I remember when they were making Let Me In, they were like, oh, we're not remaking the movie, we're making another version of the book. And it absolutely does not do that. It takes all of those characters that are towards the end and just kind of puts them all into one cop. I think the leads are good in it. I prefer the original to it though. There's some off moments in it, the CGI cats and things like that are a problem in the original, but
Very
I think it's incredibly effective and one of my favorite kind of on-screen love stories
Okay.
that are told.
That's fair.
And then my other one would be Nosferatu.
Okay.
Going way back.
Way back.
I still love it. I still think it's effective. The moment you see him, it's great. I could watch that one constantly.
Yeah. Great recommendations. There's obviously many.
Yeah,
other
we could
movies
sit here
that
for-
I'm sure you could have went on and on. I could have, there are others that even I would love to talk about, but I think that we named some of our favorites. We had some of the big ones, and but let us know what we missed.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite horror movies?
Yeah, definitely let us know that. Love to have that conversation going. It's the perfect time of year for that.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll talk to you all day about horror films.
yeah, I mean,
Tweet at me, comment, whatever.
absolutely. So, and do that.
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Rich Belson.
I'm at Stonks.
And Over Beer is at OABeer_official. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/overabeer. Like the video, share with your friends, subscribe to the page, subscribe to the YouTube page. Yeah, I don't have anything else.
No, that's going to do it for today.
Cool.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.